Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We are so excited to have actually our first artist talk in the space since COVID, so we're extremely happy that you're here joining us via Zoom. My name is Dr. Joni Hand, and I am the coordinator of the gallery at Catapult Creative House. It's so great to have people back in the space, and what better way to celebrate than with an artist talk from 3 new faculty members in the Department of Art and Design at SEMA. They will be talking about their new exhibition, Hope Chest, the opening reception of which is tomorrow night from 5 to 9. Let me introduce our speakers for this evening. Christine Adame is an intermediate artist from Laredo, Texas. She studied architecture at the University of Texas at Austin and completed her MFA in Intermedia Studio from the University of Texas at Burlington. She currently lives and works in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Erin Tucker is a studio artist and educator living and working in Cape. She grew up in Central Illinois. She received a BA in theater and worked as a costume designer for years. She moved on. She studied painting and sculpture, receiving a BFA from Western Illinois University, and then an MFA in sculpture from Indiana University in Bloomington. Denise McAllister is an interior designer and educator living and working in Cape. She grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. She earned an AAS in interior design, worked in the field for several years before returning to academia to pursue a BS in interior design and an MS in construction management, followed by a PhD in technology with a construction and design focus. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our speakers.
Hello, my name is Christine Adame, and like Dr. Hand mentioned, I was born in Laredo, Texas, and this is really important for my work as this is a border town. It's right on the edge of Texas and Mexico. It has an over 90% Hispanic population. It's kind of a confluence of culture. My culture is mixed. So on my mom's side, I have a history of immigration from Europe. And then on my dad's side, a history of immigration from Mexico. I'm also a 6th generation Mexican-American. So there's just a lot of histories that converge at fascinate me and drive my work. So the work in this show is a continuation of a body of work that's ongoing. I call them heirlooms. Heirlooms are things that are passed down generation to generation and likely might be carried on by descendants. But by making them the feature in my art, I open them up to be considered by others as heirlooms and invite them to be considered outside of my nuclear family. Heirlooms fit pretty well within the theme of the show, because a hope chest is a type of heirloom. It's tied traditionally to hopes for an unmarried woman's marriage. When I imagine a hope chest, the physical object itself, I think of a box. It might be a beautiful box, it might be a cedar chest, or it might be a simple box that contains beautiful things that would be used by a dutiful wife. To me, the hope in the hope chest can be a bit confining. It's relating to yearning for something that's not yet come to pass. And it can also relate to a roadmap for a woman or a script for a woman to follow. You might say, well, what are you talking about, Christine? You're a cisgender woman, you're also heterosexual. And so a hope chest is kind of made for you. However, I take a lot of inspiration from feminist critical theory, and there's an activist on Instagram known as Matisse Dupont, and I came across this post that I thought was really kind of transformative. And it said, if you're going to be cis, do it on purpose. To kind of clarify that, if I'm going to be a woman, I actually want to do it on purpose, and I want to question aspects of what that means. Another influence of mine is Gloria Anzalúa. She is a woman who is also of the border, a Chicana activist. And she says to She hopes for people to build with their own feminist architecture. So as a feminist in my work, I am attempting to do this. I'm attempting to build these artifacts, to build my own story, so to speak. I'm often inspired by feminist critical thinkers more so than some artists. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some impressions of feminism from ordinary people. I think that there can be kind of a binary response to feminism, where if you question something, then that also means you're kind of canceling it, or you can't do that thing. Marriage could be an example of this. So I would like personally to get married. However, I want an equitable partnership that is fulfilling and that doesn't put all of the domestic labor on the woman. And so that's just kind of an example of, thinking about things that are handed down to us and really choosing intentionally what those end up being. I have been lucky to have loving relationships with my grandparents, and I have one living and 3 that have passed on. Though I'm questioning aspects of what my womanhood looks like, I still think back to them and seek their guidance. So with this theme, Hope Chest, I prefer to imagine my hope chest as a metaphysical box. It's something that's redefined by the lessons I've absorbed through looking back to my grandparents and the lives that they lived. So the work currently in this show reflects these artifacts that I've kind of reverse engineered, so to speak. Things that I imagine that my grandparents would pack in my chest. And I say specifically my grandparents because that's where my heirlooms work began. It began with a book that my grandmother wrote, that's her memoirs, something that she passed down to her children. And this is my maternal grandmother. So reading through my grandmother's memoirs and actually remaking her book, I wanted to continue in this process of creating these objects. So with that, I'd like to talk about the work and these artifacts and basically how they fit within this idea of heirlooms and hope. All right. Actually, don't need you anymore. All right. The tapestry you see next to me, it's very special. One day I was looking through my old photos and I came across a picture of both of my grandmothers and my great-grandparents together. And they had planted a pecan tree when I was born. And I just thought it was such a beautiful thing to have them gather together. And so that kind of inspired me creating this piece that I see as a double portrait. On the left, it contains fabrics that are a lace tablecloth, and on the back, it's a golden colored drapery fabric. So these remind me of my maternal grandmother. On the right, you'll see this lacy material that is sewn to green velvet. My grandmother on my dad's side did flamenco, she danced flamenco. And so this fabric reminds me of her and her dances. And then on the back, the green velvet is very similar to the velvet she used on her vanity. And they are arranged so that they kind of look like a little bit like flags, but also like decorations. The piece is entitled "They Carried Me," and this kind of relates to their role and how they kind of both in their own ways were creative and led to my journey of being an artist. All right, so the next piece I want to talk about is this little tree here in the middle of the gallery. All right, this piece is entitled "He Never Spoke About." And what you see here is my grandfather's ammo case. And inside is a loquat tree. My grandfather was a paratrooper in World War II, but he never spoke about his experience to me or anyone as far as what my mom tells me. He had a particularly traumatic experience. He was dropped as a paratrooper somewhere where he wasn't supposed to be in Japan and was listed as AWOL. When he came back, and he was found and he came back to the States, he never accepted any military aid. And when I came to know him, I always knew that there was this loquat tree out in the front, and I knew it was a fruit tree, but it never bore fruit until about 10 years. Like I was like 10 years old, and it finally bore fruit. When I heard my stories of my grandfather and how he never spoke about that, it makes me question my ideas of patriotism and what that might mean. I have also had the opportunity to live in Japan, and so his kind of experiences, I connect with him and look back and hope that, you know, if he were alive, that we would be able to share or talk a little bit more. So in a sense, this piece is like kind of my attempt to have a conversation with him without being able to speak about it. So this transitions actually quite nicely to the piece that is here in the wall. And for these, this particular piece is entitled William Booble Sr., 1946. And so with this piece, the materials are physical and they're also augmented reality. And so in order to interface with this piece and my last piece in the exhibition, you need to take your phone and take a picture or open your camera phone and scan this AR QR code, and you'll be prompted to see an augmented reality image. I have these coiled pine needle frames here as an option, but you can access the augmented reality from anywhere and place it on a vertical space. So what I want to do now is I'm going to transition over to the computer and show you a video of that augmented reality experience. And if you want to engage with it later on, I'm going to post the links on my Instagram in somehow, some way, so that you can try it out. You can put my grandfather in your living room. Right, I'm gonna share first. Okay, hopefully you can see the movie. I'm gonna play it. There's no sound, so don't worry if you don't hear anything. All right, so that is William Booble Sr., 1946. And I'll also share the one of Barbara Lou Martin, his bride-to-be. This is also in 1946. So I'll play that. In 1946, my grandmother was 13 and my grandfather was 19. They were 2 years shy of getting married. And so I thought it was appropriate to pick these for the show and this particular theme. All right, thank you all so much.
hi everybody, I'm Erin Tucker. As Joni mentioned, I'm a new faculty member here at SEMO. And in connecting with my new colleagues over our work and over our experiences and over our hopes for coming together here and starting a new life in Cape, we found that we had common connections of hope and home that came up in almost all of our conversations. So that's where the idea for our show stemmed from, the Hope Chest. And to me, the Hope Chest is an object. It's an idea and it's a feeling. It holds the domestic items that were endowed with love for us and for our future lives. We carry them with us like a beautiful weight into an uncertain future. Hope is also a feeling. It is the product of daily effort, just as having a home is. There is hard work, constant effort, joy balanced with many moments of unpleasantness and also anxiety. It is the result of daily endurance and of resilience. It's an ongoing practice of longing, preparing, working, grieving, and preparing again. So my new works that are exhibited here are all intended to quietly explore the constant and connected cycles of hope and disappointment that we as humans experience in our romantic and domestic partnerships. And they explore the journey and the process in creating and desiring a home. Most of my work is constructed through the use and reuse of everyday objects. We live our lives with and through objects. They encompass our emotions. They're endowed with everything that we are and everything that we do. They become completely entwined with our stories. This sometimes makes it nearly impossible to separate ourselves and our experiences from the objects that are left behind in our homes after we separate from someone that we love. So I chose to use really familiar domestic objects and kind of stereotypically domestic objects that are associated with home or that might be collected in a hope chest to help me process these experiences through. Next note card. These works definitely are filled with a sense of melancholy, but I hope also to communicate a strong and determined sense of hope in spite of that. I think these two feelings are connected to one another and can't exist without one another at the same time. My hope is also that these objects are familiar enough that my viewers and anyone interacting with them can also have their own experience with these works and think and recontextualize and process their own experiences that they might have had in a domestic partnership or in their goals to making a home and sustaining a home. And I think that's all I have till we start looking at some of the works. So the first piece, because it's the closest here and it will be the easiest, is called Is That the Pattern We Picked? This is a piece where I used a collected set of china that reminded me of something that you might register for in preparation for a wedding. It's also a set of china that really reminded me of the one that my grandmother had when we were growing up, that we only saw like once a year at very special holidays. So it's a treasured item. It's an item that would most likely be passed down maternally through a family. And my choice of how it's arranged is to hopefully induce anxiety in a viewer, a sense of uncertainty, a sense of discomfort, almost a sense of like walking on eggshells, like I don't know what's gonna happen, because my experience with the thought of preparing for a marriage or a desire and hope for a home is that creepy sound effect I just made, right? It's something that I hope for. It's something that's attractive, that's beautiful, that's shiny, very similar to the set of china, but it's also something that fills me with a lot of anxiety and unease. So I really appreciate and hope that the viewer receives a kind of attractive yet repulsed yet discomforted and full of anxiety experience when they view this work. The next piece that's probably going to be easy to see is, can I move without my mask? Okay, thanks. The next piece here is just entitled Making Space. So this piece, to me, is a reflection on that concept of having a partner move into your home, and then the empty spaces that are left behind after that partner leaves. It's also a space to me where I was able to process how I compartmentalize myself in those situations. Because not only are you making space in your own home, you're making space in your own head and heart and soul for that experience. So it might be hard to see on Zoom, but a few of the drawers are filled with some of my personal items, and several of the others are left empty, so that there's a contrast of both of those experiences in the work. This way. Again, choosing another really familiar object, and an object that's centralized and associated with the home and the experience of a partnership. This is an altered metal bed frame with collected vintage pillowcases and the kind of vibe of suspended pillows or discomfort or an unease. And the piece is titled My Side, Our Side of the Story, because I am sure I'm not alone in the fact that in a lot of domestic partnership situations, it's never just about one person's experience. And in processing situations that I've been through in my life, it was really important for me to always think of not only the experience that I was going through, but also the experience that a partner was going through. And I found that a lot of that thinking and processing happened as I was trying to lay down and go to sleep. So to me, my pillows, again, as I mentioned earlier, absorbed all of this processing. And that was the place and the item that I connected to how I was thinking through those things. So in essence, like my bed, my pillows all became endowed with those experiences of me processing. So this is my way to hopefully share that and communicate a little bit of that comfort, discomfort, and a bit of like loneliness at the same time. So the final piece that I have in this show is up against these two walls suspended here. It's called Off-White Picket Fence. And this piece to me deeply connects to one of the core memories that I have growing up. My mom did a lot of our laundry and then hung it outside on a clothesline to dry. And I know she's watching, and I'm sure that she wouldn't believe this, but it was one of my favorite memories of having to like go out and put clothes on the line and take clothes in. And it's something that I have a really fond memory with, and that I deeply connect to my concept of home. As well as a white picket fence is a traditional symbol of home and iconic Americana. But those things have never always sat that well with me. They've always felt a little bit off and made me feel slightly discomforted. So hence the off-white picket fence. And it's strung up on a clothesline as though it's an object that we can continually take down and wash and attempt to reinvent. The same way I do feel the concept of home and our partnerships can always be renewed. So again, as I mentioned, I hope all of these works convey a light sense of melancholy with a heavy dash of resilience and hope and romanticism. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
I'm Denise, and I'm just so honored to work with Christine and Erin and have the Hope Chest theme that we're working from, because it so appropriately reflects the work and the research that I am currently involved in primarily. They're talking about hope at the beginning, and they're honoring their grandparents. And my work is dedicated to providing accessible housing for aging in place primarily. I'm working very hard to modify homes to create environments that people can live safely and happily as they age, as the physical limitations come in. I think the treasured belongings that were in our hope chest, perhaps, as we started, we want to keep them. We want to surround ourselves with the things that we love, our treasured, our china that we picked out as a young girl, all the treasures that we collect. And if a person is stripped away from their home environment, they lose that. And so my work is pretty dedicated, and has been for the last several years. My research is all focused on home modifications and communicating those modifications and adapting homes to support the needs of people as they age. So what I'm presenting in the gallery this month, I've got 2 projects on display, and I don't have art like these guys do. I'm a designer, I'm an interior designer, but I have 2 projects that I've currently just finished. And the first one, it was kind of difficult for me to take it on because it's an assisted living facility, which is what I work very hard against. But it's a home. It's a beautiful home in a residential neighborhood. Part of my passion for this mission that I'm on is to not segregate our elderly from the rest of the population. You know, for grandma and grandpa to be rocking on the front porch when the children get off the school bus, you know, to be out watering their flowers and not ship them off to some big institutional facility, but keep them in the community. There's many economic and social reasons why we want to keep our elderly within our communities. So the Emerald Haven project is based in Kokomo, Indiana. It's a 9-bedroom home. It houses strangers, people that perhaps aren't family. There are rooms to accommodate couples or sisters or brothers, but there's also single rooms. So it's a new trend in housing for the elderly. It's called residential assisted living facilities or assisted living homes. There's a lot of research being done right now on the challenges for zoning and all those kind of building things. There's a lot of work being done on the economic impact. It's a big real estate investment opportunity for people who might be buying and purchasing property to rent to other demographics. But there's not a lot of research being done on how that is impacting those people who are being housed, who need to be cared for in a home, preferably in a home, and how that is all working. So I participated outside Emerald Haven and put it together last summer, right before I came to Cape Girardeau. And right now, one thing that really excites me, and I'm getting ready to kick off the study on, I think probably everybody's aware that the biggest loss from COVID-19 so far has been in the nursing home facilities. This particular facility had no cases of COVID, and they had no restrictions, not no restrictions, but the residents that live in Emerald Haven were able to visit with their families. You see those haunting pictures of people, grandma inside and the little child outside the window holding up their coloring. And that wasn't the case in Emerald Haven. They were able to have visitors come in, screen, disinfect, social distancing, just like we've done here at SEMO. It's a beautiful facility. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the pandemic response that has occurred. And I'm proud of the fact that the residents that are in, we just opened last August. As I came here, they were opening there, are making friends. There's opportunities. We're all kind of different. Some people might want a social experience. They might want to have dinner, as a family. I kind of told my kids, don't you guys put me in a place like this. Because I feel like I'm kind of more private than that. But I don't know if I'd be having dinner around the table. This place is designed with a table that seats 10. This is a 9-bedroom facility. The intent of the owners, who of course I've become very close to, like interior designers always do with their owners, their heart is in it. They really visualize this facility. Everybody's sitting down for breakfast together, lunch, dinner. They've got a big, if you come to the gallery, you'll see photographs of the project as it was finished. Big table that had a seat 10. I discussed in my presentation boards the type of furniture that we selected, the kind of things that we were concerned about. 9 private bedrooms with baths and private or social areas, outdoor areas. That's really important to me, the holistic importance of being in nature. This facility has indoor and outdoor areas, lots of opportunity for the residents to go sit outside. We're planning a mirrored image house to this in the back, so we can create kind of like a community. And I wish we could do one on like a courtyard, but right now there's only enough land to do two. My clients hope to move from that, so really excited about that, and excited to follow it and do more research. There's a lot of these homes popping up. When I first heard about it, I was like, how are we going to get zoned? How are we going to get it? You know, what's the occupancy code? Well, it's an occupancy residential 9, so it is a residential occupancy code. So really, really exciting for me to see this coming, just for the reasons that Christine and Erin talked about. You know, it's just so important. The other project that I have on display, my presentation boards is on this side, and that is a studio apartment here in Cape Girardeau, and it is designed to house, we'll call them, I changed the name last night, but different generations. You know, not necessarily an in-law suite. I resisted that term, but it's designed to house different generations. I'm looking at multi-generational housing. It's only been in the last maybe 50 years that we've really moved away from that. It was very common for multi-generations to live in the same house. And now, you know, it's not been that hip lately, but we're looking at providing opportunities like that. This particular facility is, this home is here in Cape Girardeau, studio apartment attached to the main dwelling. So there's opportunity for perhaps a person, an elder, you know, mother-in-law, father-in-law, grandma, grandpa. I just met someone last night who said they have what would traditionally be called an in-law suite, and her son and his wife are living there because they decided to step back from the corporate world that they were involved in and go back to school. So it's a perfect chance for them to live, you know, without, you know, with a less expensive overhead and have the support. I'm really excited about multi-generational housing because for grandparent support, you know, a lot of cultures, the grandparents raise the children, which I think is kind of cool. I've been raising children as a mother and as a grandmother, but it's kind of neat to see these cultures where the vibrant young parents are working and the grandparents have the role of raising the children. So this type of facility could support that too. The opportunity for grandmother, grandfather to be on site, help with the children, have a close relationship, share meals or not. So those are the two projects that I have on display that I'm discussing here. And the way interior designers discuss our art. Our art is the rooms, the spaces that we create. Erin and I have been talking for months, like, I'm not an artist. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. But that's my art. My art is the spaces that I create and the passion that I put behind it. So thank you all for being here.
So maybe could all three of you get up to the mic because we have some, see if we have any questions. We have one. And if you guys in Zoom land, if you have any questions, please type it in the chat and I will let people know. So we have a question from Ryan. And he says, so I have a question for y'all. Going off the concept of home coupled with your work, I was wondering if you could talk about if your work has changed or evolved along with your transition into CAPE and CMO in general. So I don't know if you guys want to.
Okay, I don't. That's an easy one for me to answer. Hi, Ryan. Thank you for your question. I've moved around. The longest I've ever lived in one place, I think, was while I was doing my undergrad because I was a little bit slow. Since then, it's been about a 4-year cycle of continuing transcendence. And like, so me coming to CAPE, I have a really, really strong desire to have it be a place of longevity and to actually set down roots here. So I think that also helped inspire this new work because I've really been focused on the concept of home and finding a place where I feel like I belong and I'm ready to fit in and I'm ready to have a little bit more sense of stability and an idea of permanence. So that's filtering in for me and something that I'm really excited to continue to explore. And so far, even though I'm still very new, it feels like that's going to be a possibility for me.
Okay, so I started started the heirlooms in 2019 and then the pandemic hit, and I was just like in the pandemic rut where it just didn't seem right to continue with something that happened before. But then I moved to Cape and it seemed right to go back to those making the heirlooms. I think that's because when I grew up, my family was fairly nomadic within Texas, like because of my dad's job. And so moving around, I didn't really connect necessarily to place, but I did like maintain that or cherish the things that were constant. And so my family was kind of that constant. So when I moved to Cape, I guess like I kind of naturally went back to that body of work.
I guess I'll address that real quickly. I'm kind of stubborn and I'm sticking with what I came with. But I do think Cape's influencing my work. I see a lot more history and a lot more foundation here. It's a lot like I didn't grow up in the town that my grandparents were in. So I love it here and I plan to stay here and really inspired. But I haven't changed my focus of my work. I'm just inspired to continue to be harder. That would be my answer, Ryan.
I had a question for you because I've been kind of behind the scenes as you guys have been working together. So my question is, because you come from different places artistically, how did you find that common ground? How did you come up with that place where you all finally felt, okay, this is going to be a cohesive show?
Yeah, well, I would have to give that to Erin. I think Erin, I don't know how she did it, but she came up with the hope chest, and Jody was behind the scenes nudging us to get together. And when Erin first threw that out, I was like, well, I don't know if my people will help, but I hope they're certainly not collecting heirlooms to start a life, but it's holistic the way it came together, very organic. And Christine, just was already working on it. I think Erin and I were more new to it than Christine was, so it was really awesome. And it really wasn't until this morning when I read everybody's artist statement that I was like, wow, good job, Erin Tucker.
I think it just came to happened a little bit naturally through conversation. A lot of times we think that designers and artists working in other materials have a lot of disconnect, but there's always a thick amount of connection that can be found through conversation. Asking fellow artists what they're working on, what they're thinking, what their inspirations are, what drives them to make work. And in having those conversations with my awesome new colleagues, it started to develop and we started to see overlaps in both our thinking and our making. And so while we didn't quite have this like a theme that we were creating towards, we had it as a central idea that helped tie together all of the work that the three of us were already doing. So yeah, I think that just spawned out of our conversations and getting to connect with one another and getting to know each other. And I know for me as well, that not only helped our show grow and helped our show become a little bit more cohesive and connected, it also helped me feel, and this is my emotional moment, it also helped me feel a lot more placed and a lot more connected to my new faculty because such a huge shift in my career and a huge shift in moving, there was some discomfort and anxiety. But this process, both getting to work with you, Joni, and getting to know these women better, helped me to feel even more at home here.
Christine, do you want to add to anything?
Yeah, so I also just moved to Cape last August, and it's been kind of funny coming to work in a pandemic and not being able to see anybody except through a screen. And so I would like second that amazing feeling of belonging by being able to interface more with my colleagues and especially being able to collaborate on this amazing show. So it's been a very positive experience. We're super lucky.
Okay, we have a question from Louise. She said, this is a question for all. How do you think that objects, especially by family members who have passed on, carry their spirits in some way? I meant objects previously owned by family members who have passed on.
I guess is the question like things that were belonging to the lost loved one? Okay. I feel like I have this like sort of animist belief with some of these things, and I have to like honor them in some way by incorporating them into like my art or in my home. And so they at some point, like my memories fade, and so the heirlooms kind of like can, like my grandfather's ammo chest, like I wasn't even remotely born, like, but when he had that experience, but it makes me feel connected to him with the story that he would never he might not have even been able to tell me, like, if, you know, he was still around. So, yeah, I think that they embody a connection, and I kind of consider them like almost these spiritual objects.
I don't ever actually use any of the realized objects that have been passed down to me in my family or that I've collected. These are definitely just found set of china that reminded me of the object, because to me, I also think of these objects with a pretty severe amount of reverence, as Christine mentioned. So I would never want to like alter them or damage them or screw them up in the way that you do when you're attempting to make a sculpture. So I find objects that are similar, but in my practice, I also connect that a lot with the concept of memory, because the memories that you have tied and connected to those objects are really your own. They're completely separate from the experience that the original owner had who passed on. So I like to think of it as me translating my experience with the object through myself and into a new object.
I guess in summary, I would say Louise, great question. I'm very fortunate to have 5 siblings. So as we have lost our grandparents and most recently my father, nothing went to Goodwill. You know, we were able to divide, especially my father's books and the things that were precious to him. We didn't fight over them, but we honor them, and we visit them at each other's homes. And I think, you know, that's what's so hard for me to think about, people having to give up their home and all their belongings. And I'm really troubled by the tendency for people, the young, we're told, the young, I don't know, the millennials, Jim's, wives, they don't want your stuff. They don't want your stuff. And that breaks my heart, because I don't think hopefully that's not true. And I think amongst my grandchildren and my children, they want my stuff. So that's a great question.
Yeah. Anything else from Zoom people? Okay. Well, thank you all so much. This was really a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all in Zoom for, Zoom people say thank you, she says. Thank you, Denise from Louise. Levy Sanders says, I love the bed one. Your mom, Patricia Chuck Tucker says, and I thought I was just giving you a chore to do. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good night. Bye-bye, everybody. Justin says thank you. Good job, y'all, from the Sanderses. Nice.